thinking, how can he get over such a violent bug overnight? He was like, no, we're not cancelling the wedding. Okay guys, I am back for part 2 of my crazy German wedding story. If you haven't watched part 1, I highly recommend you watching part 1 before you watch this part. We had so much to organise the day before the wedding. My sister was flying in from New York and she was flying into Frankfurt, which is an hour drive away. My father-in-law was picking her up and also picking up my husband's uncle who lived in Ireland, and it turned out that he mucked up his tickets and he was flying into Frankfurt Hahn, which is a different airport, which is like 3 hours drive away. He didn't realise he had booked tickets to the wrong airport. He thought he was flying into just the main Frankfurt airport. So anyway, after they picked up my sister, they had to go and pick up Rob's uncle from Frankfurt Hahn, which was another, I think it was another 2 hours on top of the 1 hour drive. And my sister said they just kept driving and driving and driving, and my auntie and my sister did not know what was going on. They couldn't ask my father-in-law. It was just like a bit of a disaster. They were thinking, okay, I'm sure that Antoinette and Rob are not living this far away, and they were driving in like a totally opposite direction and everything, and they just didn't know. They were just like, okay, we just have to roll with it. My sister was actually 6 months pregnant at the time, and she desperately needed to go to the toilet, and she did not know how to tell my father-in-law that she needed to stop and go to the toilet. If she had said toilet, I'm sure he would have understood, but she didn't know that toilet was the same, like a similar word in German. But anyway, they eventually arrived and I got to see my sister, and it was amazing, and it was so wonderful to see my sister. She got to meet Rob for the first time, and Rob was not looking that great and not feeling that great after a day and night of vomiting and diarrhea, but it was really nice. They finally got to meet. But anyway, once they got to Rob's parents and they were all settled and everything, Rob and I had to travel to Frankfurt Airport to pick up 2 of my friends who were only able to get a flight at like 11 o'clock or something like that. I think it may have been like 10 o'clock at night when their flights arrived. Rob, he was feeling a lot better, thank goodness. His colour had come back. He was feeling much better. He was still quite weak though. And so we drove in the night to pick up 2 of my friends who had arrived at the airport from London, and by the time we got back, we dropped them at a hotel, and by the time we got back it was like midnight and our wedding was the next morning. I remember just bursting out crying because I was so overwhelmed and so tired by everything that had gone on that day and the days leading up to the wedding. I just broke down and I just said, I have to go to bed. I'll deal with this in the morning. There were just so many people I had to worry about and so much I had on my mind, and so Rob and I went to bed. Okay, so the day of our wedding, we woke up at around 6 o'clock, and it's definitely not the typical wedding story. If I was getting married in New Zealand, I would maybe be staying in a hotel with my bridesmaids and that kind of thing, and Rob would be staying somewhere else. Then I'd be going to the hair salon and getting my hair and makeup done and that kind of thing. It was not like that at all. It was like under the circumstances with people coming from different countries and so much going on. The morning was not a typical wedding morning. I was feeling quite stressed, to be honest. I remember being absolutely exhausted. I could hardly open my eyes, and I suddenly clicked, oh my goodness, the photographer. We're getting professional photos taken. And I actually thought that Rob had organised the photographer for after the wedding, but he actually organised it for before the wedding. And I was like, Rob, why did you organise it for before the wedding? Because you're going to see me before I walk down the aisle. That can't happen. And Rob was like, no, it'll be fine, it'll be okay. And I was like, okay, nothing about this wedding has been traditional, so just why would the photographer be any different? So I just kind of brushed it off. So anyway, we had to meet the photographer at 9 o'clock to get our wedding photos before the wedding started. And I had so much to do. I remember I was doing my hair, and I remember not having the right bobby pins. I was having like this bun, this like really sleek kind of bun, and I bought the wrong bobby pins and my bun kept falling out, and I couldn't get my hair right. I was thinking I should have gone to a hairdresser to get my hair done, because I was stressed and my hair was not turning out very well. I finally sort of got it looking okay. My auntie, who was actually a beauty therapist, thankfully was able to do my makeup. She made a beautiful job, which I was so grateful she could do that. And I got dressed, I got in my wedding dress, and we were running so late. And I remember Rob seeing me in my wedding dress, and he was just like, quick, we need to get out the door. And he didn't even comment and say that I look nice. He was just in such a rush to get out the door. And I was like, and how do I look? He was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, you look beautiful. And I was just like, oh great. It wasn't going to plan at all. But anyway, we were like, okay, we're out of the house, we're dressed. Rob looked very handsome, he was in a suit, and we were like, we are going to make the most of this wedding. It doesn't matter about all the things that didn't turn out. It's, you know, we're dressed, we're ready, we're going to get our photos, and we are going to enjoy this wedding. And so we got our professional photos taken. We had the photos taken in Summerhausen in the beautiful wine village with just a beautiful fairy tale backdrop. And I remember Rob was just really posing for the photos, and he's normally very shy and awkward in photos, but he was really into it. He was so happy, I was so happy. My sister came along because she was my sort of bridesmaid. So we made it to the church. I remember it was such a relief. I left out the whole story of how we had to meet with the priest and prepare everything for the wedding and that kind of thing, and discuss what we wanted for our wedding ceremony and everything. Thankfully the priest could actually speak English, a little bit of English, so he had agreed to have half of the ceremony in English and German and sort of mix it up. And we didn't actually have a translator. Normally at a bicultural Catholic wedding in Germany, you need to have a translator if one person does not understand the main language, but Rob actually agreed to translate everything for me just to kind of make it easier. And I was thinking, how's this gonna work? Anyway, it was time to walk down the aisle, and ideally I would have liked to have like live music, but that was kind of too much to organize amongst the chaos. So we did have a track of Canon in D, which is just a beautiful classical wedding piece, which we'd organised to be played as I walked down the aisle with my mum. Rob's friend was going to organise the music, everything was going to plan, the music started playing, I was walking down the aisle, Rob was like looking at me with so much love in his eyes. I remember he had tears in his eyes and I had tears in my eyes. It was so beautiful and everything was falling into place. And then I reached Rob at the end of the aisle and the music just kept playing and playing and playing and playing and like looping, and there was just no end. I remember Rob was like telling his friend, just turn it off, turn it off. I think his friend thought it was going to stop on its own, but for some reason it just kept playing and playing. And I was like, oh great. But anyway, eventually Rob's friend turned off the music and we were like, phew. And so the ceremony started and it was so beautiful, and the priest was just so lovely. He incorporated the English and the German language just so beautifully together, and Rob was like whispering to me the parts that I couldn't understand, and I had, you know, my family members in the front row and Rob's family members, and everyone was so happy, and it just went so beautifully, the church service. And my auntie, she read a beautiful piece by Khalil Gibran, a beautiful poem about marriage, and my mum spoke, and it was beautiful. And so, you know, the church service went very smoothly, and I remember the church bells, and we were walking out of the church and people were throwing like petals, everyone was throwing like rose petals at us, and it was just so beautiful, and we were so happy, and we were married. And then it was time to go to our beautiful venue for our wedding reception. And so everybody somehow, I don't know how everyone managed to get there. Thankfully my in-laws organised everything, but we all went to the restaurant in Summerhausen for our wedding reception. There was a table set up with some shots of vodka, and it was this little like Polish tradition where you have to have a shot of vodka before you walk in. So we all headed down some steps into the wine cellar, and I remember there were candles that led us down into this wine cellar, and the whole wine cellar was lit with candles. My mother-in-law had made the most beautiful job of decorating this wine cellar. It was so beautiful and so romantic and just so perfect. I was just like, this is amazing. The Polish guest started singing this Polish wedding song, and it was like sort of like a celebration song of being married. It was so special, and I was like crying because it was just so beautiful. A friend of ours was playing beautiful classical piano, so it was just so romantic. Then Rob and I had our wedding dance. Oh, it was so sweet. Then everybody started mingling, and before we knew it, like the New Zealand guests and the Polish guests and the German guests were all mingling with each other and chatting somehow and managing to communicate, and it was so much fun. And then all the food came out. It was this absolutely magnificent Mediterranean feast. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the food, but it was just absolutely beyond what I could have imagined. Like, it far exceeded my expectations. Everybody had a beautiful sit-down meal. Everything was just so perfect, and the food was just absolutely divine. Then came dessert, and then everybody was dancing. There was so much alcohol, there was so much wine and beer, and of course vodka because of the Polish influence. Everybody was getting super tipsy and dancing, and it was just a very, very fun wedding reception. There was Polish music and New Zealand music and German music, and it was just a big mix of different cultures, and oh, it was so much fun. I can't even explain how much fun we had at the wedding reception. My auntie was just getting up there on the dance floor. And then later in the night, after everybody had eaten and had dessert, there came this huge buffet. I remember being so surprised because I was not expecting this buffet, but it was just so delicious. It was all sorts of Italian finger food. So anyway, as the night went on, obviously people were drinking and dancing and having an amazing time. But what I actually forgot to mention is that my friend from New Zealand, she was an absolute hit. Like, all of Rob's friends were just like, wow, she is gorgeous, and she was single at the time. And so, you know, as the night went on, everybody, like all the guys, had her up on the dance floor and they were spinning her around, but it did go a little bit pear-shaped at one point. One of Rob's really good friends, I am not going to name him, hopefully he's not watching, but he was at the wedding with his girlfriend. The problem was he only had eyes for my friend. His poor girlfriend was sitting in a corner, and everyone felt so sorry for her. Everyone was trying to cheer her up, and I remember my auntie talking to her and saying, don't worry, and just you know, we were trying to like make light of the situation. I remember his girlfriend got to the point where she was so angry, she picked up a wine glass and threw it across the table at him. To be 100% honest, he actually deserved it. And I remember the wine glass just shattering everywhere, and it didn't actually touch him, like he wasn't hurt or anything. I don't think she intended for it to actually land on him. She just wanted to make a point. By that point, it was getting towards the end of the night, so it was pretty wild anyway in there. So she did make a bit of a scene, but I totally understand why she did it, and he totally deserved it. And as you could probably guess, they are no longer together. She broke up with him not long after the wedding, actually. But anyway, I'm slowly wrapping the story up here, but I do have one last disaster which I have to share. Rob and I were going to be spending our first night as an official married couple. Actually, we were before that officially married, but we were pretending that it was our first night of being an official married couple. We had planned to spend that night at a beautiful hotel. So Rob had actually booked the honeymoon suite a couple of weeks before, maybe even like a month before or something, but it was already planned. And yeah, he booked the honeymoon suite, and we were going to have a beautiful breakfast. Anyway, at the end of the evening, we stayed till almost the very end, and I think it would have been about 1 o'clock in the morning at this stage, and there were people still partying. And we were driven to the hotel. I was still in my wedding dress, Rob was still in his suit, and Rob had already organised that we were able to turn up at this time, that somebody was going to be at the reception desk. We rang the doorbell to get into the hotel, and nobody answered, and so we just kept waiting. We rang again, nobody answered, and we just kept ringing and nobody answered. We literally spent almost an hour outside of the hotel trying to get in, and nobody was opening up. We just gave up in the end, and we ended up having to walk from the hotel to Rob's parents' house, which was like maybe a 15-minute walk. I remember Rob just picking me up and carrying me almost the entire way back to his parents' place. We did not have a phone on us. We couldn't call a taxi. There were nobody on the streets because it was so late. Actually, a few people drove past and would have been like, what on earth is going on? A bride and a groom walking at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so it was so disappointing. We were just like, oh my goodness. Rob and I spent our wedding night on a mattress. I think it was even a blow-up mattress in Rob's parents' spare room. We never ended up contacting the hotel and asking them why they didn't open the door that night. I don't know why we didn't. We really should have. We didn't end up paying anything because we would have had to pay it right at the end anyway, and we just thought we're just gonna leave it. So anyway, that was the end to our very adventurous wedding. It was all round a wonderful wedding, and I just had the time of my life, and so did Rob. Despite all of the hiccups and bumps along the way, we have such fond memories of our wedding. It was just so magical for us, and nothing went to plan, nothing was traditional. It was just a big mess, but it was a big, beautiful mess, and we loved every moment of it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Also, do not forget to watch the part 1 before you watch the part 2, because if you just watch the part 2, it probably won't make sense. It all goes together. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. I would love you to consider subscribing to my channel. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram, and I will see you again really soon. Bye!